like to start introducing yourselves, please?
Yeah, sure. Happy to jump in. So my name is Glendean Hamilton. I use she, her pronouns. I identify as a Black woman, born in Jamaica, raised in the Bronx, New York, all core to my identity. So I will pass it over to Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff Metzdorff. I'm the co-founder of Mill City and Saint City Running in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I use he, him pronouns. I identify as a white male, born in Hawaii, raised in rural Minnesota, and currently living in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Happy to be here. Song.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, everyone. My name is Song Nguyen, or I'll pronounce it correctly as well, Song Nguyen, and I am Vietnamese American. I actually was born in Vietnam and moved over here in '96. And I've been, in North Carolina, and currently I'm on the land of the Catawba and Waxhaw people. And I have been in the States for over 20 years. So I consider myself fully American at this point, but I do bring a lot of my Vietnamese heritage and culture with me throughout my life. And I lead our product team here at Features.
Thank you all. And my name is Sergio Avila. I use pronouns he, him. I am joining today from the land of Tohono O'odham and Pascua Yaqui people in what is known as Tucson, Arizona. I was born in Mexico. I have lived in the United States for 20 years and been a US citizen for about 10 of those. And as being born in Mexico, I identify as indigenous. In Mexico, it is very common. Many people are of mixed origin. We are all identified south of the US border as Latinos or Latinx. However, I personally prefer to identify as indigenous, not a tribal member, not Native American, but with strong roots and connections to indigenous people of central Mexico, Zacateco people specifically. I am a 51-year-old heterosexual 5'7" male. I am a trail runner, I am an uncle, I am a son, I am a brother, a husband, and I am a crazy cat person. So I'll just read the questions if you all want to start, but we would like to start this conversation by allowing each one of our guests to share some experiences in terms of how their identity shows up and addresses some of the hard conversations that happen very often around this time. So we are very open for you all sharing your values, your principles, everything about your family. And we are very interested to hear about why you think this topic is necessary or why you think that speaking up is needed. Anyone who wants to take that will be great. Thank you.
I can start. I guess I mentioned I'm grew up in rural Minnesota, a large Catholic family, and what you get at these holiday gatherings is a diversity of opinions. It's about the only diversity that you get at a Midwest rural holiday gathering. And what I found is they've become more frequent. A hard conversation has become more frequent really since 2020. And I think my experience, and at some point we'll probably get to those personal experiences, has been for a long time sitting and listening. As I'm 40 now, and I've always had strong opinions, but as a younger person, I would sit and listen a lot. You're the little kid at the adult table, listening and taking it in, and that kind of parlays into being a young adult and still continuing to kind of listen and take it in. And I think I felt like you know, I'd been quiet for a long time, and I think coming out of 2020, being in, you know, our businesses are in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, and you know, the George Floyd's murder and the reckoning that came after was pretty impactful on me and my wife. And I think it kind of was this opportunity for me to kind of speak up and say, you know, I think, you know, and it's taken different approaches, where I think initially I was really angry. And in some of the pre-work that we've done as a group, you know, I kind of talked about how, you know, you can sit there and have two people yelling at each other. No one's going to change their mind. And I think I've kind of evolved from like, okay, I'm going to finally say something. Damn it, I'm gonna let them know how I feel and how wrong they are. And in the, you know, now in 2023, you know, 3 years, I realized that there can be different approaches, and that might allow someone to listen a little bit more. And I think that having these conversations and doing it in, you know, a respectful dialogue, I've found has been so much more successful. And you're not going to change anyone's mind in that immediate moment, but having the opportunity to maybe they have something to walk away from that conversation, and they take it home with them. And it's not they're not thinking that you were just a complete jerk. They were thinking like, okay, you know, there was a measured, respectful dialogue. And I found that having that ability to kind of step back in the moment when it's getting heated, and show some grace and understand that and people are coming from different places, but I feel like that's what's been so impactful to me over the past 3 years, is kind of that journey that I've been on, from the, okay, I'm going to say something, to, you know, I'm going to just let everyone know where I'm at. And it's more now about like, how can I maybe help shed some light on something they might not see.
Thanks for sharing, Jeff.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful, because what comes to mind for me is oftentimes people will say like, happy holidays. But, you know, for some people, it may not be happy for a host of reasons. And one of those reasons could be the fear of the discomfort that they may feel when they walk into a space that is supposed to be considered like home, or their chosen home, and who will be there, and the experiences that they'll have, and the conversations they'll have. And, you know, I think it's just, you know, important that ahead of that we like do work to like prepare ourselves for whatever is going to meet us when we go to whatever chosen gathering we go to. And, you know, I think about, for me, like I am very fortunate that like holidays conjure up, for the most part, like great feelings for me. And, you know, I don't think that in difficult circumstances, whether they come during the holidays or otherwise, you know, values that like I keep in mind for difficult moments is, you know, preserving my peace, and like finding that space to preserve that, you know, to Jeff's point, like listening, authentic listening, and like inquiry to like understand. And also like, you know, stepping back if I need to, and from the conversation, from the moment, like changing the topic. So I'm really excited to like dive in with this group about the experiences that we've had and things that we've learned, and what may be hard, and what we might be fearing or excited about, and ways that like we could handle that together.
Thank you, Glendean. I think I can really relate to a lot of things that you just said. And then I would also add that I might be one of the people that may end up bringing up a hard conversation during the holiday. And that has been more recent, because when people ask me, you know, in a family gathering or with close friends, and when they ask me how I'm doing, because we may have not met, you know, throughout the year, and this is a special occasion, I want to be honest with them, you know, and I can't hide the side of myself that, you know, the things that I care about. And I would say that, in recent years, I have been the one to bring up topics about things that are important to me in terms of racial justice, or, things that impact my life and also my well-being. So I share that, and I want to have open conversations to really allow those around me, because I would say that in my family setting, we don't normally talk about those type of things, right? So if it's not me that brings it up, then we wouldn't have those conversations, and sometimes avoiding those conversations are a problem as well. So therefore, I find myself in the position where I do bring those hard conversations up sometimes, but I do want to also have my boundaries, similar to what Glendean was saying, is making sure that I find that healthy balance of sharing and being vulnerable and being honest with how I'm feeling, but also setting the proper boundaries, especially for those who I know may not see things the same way as me. I hope that it does connect us more, but sometimes when you find that there's this continuous wall between the two of you, that's when I have to, make sure I give myself that space to step away as well. So.
Thank you all for sharing. Yeah, I feel that a lot of these things, the hard conversations and our understanding of a lot of topics relate to our life experience. It's very difficult to learn racism from a book. It is, in fact, a privilege to learn about racism from a book instead of the daily experiences that people might have throughout all their life, not even knowing where those come from. And I mention that because I grew up in Mexico. I went to school in Mexico. I am the son of 2 medical doctors. And in very simple ways, there's 3 important professions in Mexico, and people are highly respected: a lawyer, a priest, and a doctor. And so my parents created an environment of social awareness. We were financially comfortable. My brother and I grew in privilege. We always had our food secured, our education secured, and very likely we took those things for granted. And we were not able to see other people who didn't have that. Coming to the United States as an educated professional, my professional background is in conservation, and I grew up in this conservation movement thinking that the idea of protecting nature needed to be removing people from those places, which is how national parks were created in this country. That's why we have the Yellowstones, the Grand Canyons, the Yosemites, because an European idea was brought to this country that in order to protect nature, we needed to separate it from people. Well, it turns out that it was native people who were removed from those places. And so the conservation movement has never been inclusive of other than white people who see nature as a recreation or a scientific place, but not a place to live, a place to develop a culture, a language, and much less an understanding of connecting with sacred sites, with local places. So the values that I have used for this is, first, self-reflection. Before trying to understand anybody else, I need to understand myself and understand where I come from, what I was fed, how I was raised, and how that might have an impact on other people. In Mexico, growing up, my mother as a doctor suffered a lot because she was one of the few, if not the only one, female doctor at work. So I remember her coming back, crying at dinner, feeling very frustrated because male doctors would be very condescending, because she wouldn't get a lifelong contract, because she wouldn't be paid as much as male doctors. So that raised my awareness about the imbalances and the preferences in the patriarchy for men. And that allowed me to self-reflect the privilege that I have myself. But then coming to the States, I became quickly aware that being a person of color, regardless of my degrees, regardless of my family or professional background, just being a person of color put me on an end of things where I have been overly policed, questioned by the police. I very regularly am stopped by the Border Patrol when I try to go back and forth to Mexico. I have been threatened with guns by the Border Patrol, the U.S. Border Patrol. I have had helicopters come down to where I'm doing my research. And all of that made me aware that it doesn't matter all the other things I am. Certain people are educated to just see color and look for an enemy on that. And so I started learning more about indigenous communities and the impacts of conservation on indigenous communities. I left the world of conservation because I wasn't comfortable upholding and perpetuating the oppression of indigenous and other communities. And I'm a board member of the Running Industry Diversity Coalition because that experience also applies to running. Because I am tired of being the only one at the race, at the table, at the event, where it is dominated by other identities. I also think that it's very important that people understand the difference between being non-racist and being anti-racist. There is a very important phrase that says we need to be anti-racist. It is not enough to be non-racist, because non-racist doesn't mean that you are engaged in dismantling racism. And so through life experiences, I've come to find a path for me to be more open, empathetic, and understanding, trying to be an ally and a co-conspirator for those who don't get their voice heard, their experiences seen, and their lives respected as others do. I have the second question. Sorry, Glendean, were you going to say something? I wasn't looking, no. The next question, I was looking at the thing. The next question is how to speak up or step back, how to speak up with a cultural social customs, respect, honoring elders, disrupting the patriarchy, and acknowledge these conversations can come with a sacrifice of close relationships. That's what we have next.
Go ahead, Son. No, go.
Yeah, I can kind of kick that off a little bit. I would say that I can relate to this very much because I have personally dealt with this in my family, and I did share some of this in the pre-work that we've talked about, which was, within my family, I kind of share that we don't speak about a lot of these things when it comes to racial justice. And there's a lot of times where, I think we make assumptions about, and I'm kind of sharing this, and a part of me was even contemplating about sharing this because it is very personal to me. So it does deal with my relationship with my father, and I love him dearly, and he means the world to me. But we have had to have difficult conversations in understanding our differences, and there are cultural norms that I've been kind of raised up in, kind of understanding that we have to respect our elders, and you kind of sometimes speak when you're told to. But I don't think my parents have never been really strict on that. But there's just this known respect in the way that we go about that in our day-to-day. And part of it is not speaking out of turn sometimes, or and if you have a difference of opinion, you can't raise your voice. And so some of those things have, I think, held me back on sharing my views and my thoughts when I was young. And then more recently, I have learned to really have a voice and speak for those who, in centering the voices that aren't heard, especially when I know that my parents and family's perspective and views may be pretty limited to the lens that they have and the people that they surround themselves with. So I want to bring a different perspective and have those conversations. And there are times where it has been very difficult, and it has upset not only myself and my father's relationship, but the extended family. And, you know, we always talk about keeping peace within the family. But when it comes to these topics, I think, you know, my dad's view on certain things have been very different than mine. And at first, when we approach it, it can be very heated. But over time, I do, you know, I have learned that by hearing more of his perspective, I did find that I had made assumptions about maybe because he believed in this thing, that he believes in all the things, you know, and I kind of grouped him and like made judgments, and it's not like we see eye to eye on things yet, and I still have work towards that, but I do feel like I understand his perspective, and I am learning to kind of overcome this and try to build my relationship with my father, and come this holiday. And I actually first want to mention that, you know, we don't, you know, in my family, we don't celebrate these holidays around the end of the year. And we've adapted that when we moved to America, and we started to celebrate as a way to get together and be with the family. So it's very interesting that how it has become a part of us, even though it wasn't part of our culture. And I think over time we've kind of evolved in that perspective. But I did just want to share how I am having a difficult time with my relationship with my father when it comes to certain conversations, and I'm kind of learning through that today, and I hope to learn more through our conversations as well.
Yeah, Song, thank you for sharing that. I think it's one thing that you mentioned that kind of like struck a particular chord with me was that because they believe in one thing, doesn't mean they believe in the entire chapter and verse of all the things that might be associated with that on a broader scale. And I think that's a really good reminder for me. And I think that, you know, when we're talking about how to speak up, you know, not assuming that there is a, you know, just a hard, fast rule for everybody that has this opinion. It also means that they're X, Y, and Z. And maybe, you know, kind of trying to parse that out a little bit and find the common ground and let kind of like, you know, can we anchor on something that we both believe in, that we both are like, okay, like here's something that we both believe in, and this is why I believe in it. Tell me why you share a similar view on this particular subject, when frankly it surprises me. And I think that's like that's something really cool that I hadn't thought about before, as a way to kind of like open that conversation up again. Like when we started, I was talking about, you know, it just comes, my experience, you know, in 2020 was just like, who's gonna yell the loudest, and that got us nowhere fast. You know, the name of this is Hard Conversations During the Holidays, and I've like been thinking, you know, it's not contentious conversations during the holidays. There are ways that we can have difficult conversations, but, you know, to your point, maybe find some place that there is some common ground and use that as an opportunity to kind of grow. You know, I don't think you know, there's a number of family members and a number of, you know, family friends, and there are people who I hold very dearly, and we have extremely different, you know, political and social views, and it's hard. Like I don't like, one of our talking points here is, you know, sacrificing a close relationship, and that's really hard for me. Like you know, I care for everyone in some manner. So I'm a softie that I just don't know if I can close the door. I think I'd rather just continue to try and break down those barriers, and maybe, you know, like I said, it's hard to get them to do a 180, but is there a way to get them to come out of that conversation by pivoting 5 degrees, not 180 degrees? And I think we can consider, like, to me, I would consider that a win if I can get somebody to just, like, again, take something home with them and not just be like, wow, Jeff's an asshole. Like, I'd be really like, I'm like, that's a win. Like, and that's honestly, that's probably how some of my views came. Like, I've definitely evolved my political and social views from, growing up in rural Minnesota and farming community to kind of where I sit now. It's like, it wasn't this awakening, but it was like death by 1,000 cuts. I just like slowly started kind of listening a little bit more. So I think if we can have that view of like, let's try to play the long game maybe, and we can maybe have some success, but not all at once, which, we all want to, we all want to do everything right now, check the box. And we just need to realize that things of this magnitude don't work that way. So thank you for sharing that song. That was super, super impactful on me. Thank you.
I just want to thank you both for like reminding me right now that like incremental progress is like still valuable, even like during in like hard, difficult conversations. Jeff, like you said, like 5 degrees of a shift, if possible, with someone, a family member or whomever, is like so important. And also, I think, to something that like Song said, understanding the perspective of like why that person may have that worldview is also so powerful. And I think it's important to remember that like understanding doesn't necessarily mean like agreeing, right? And that they are like mutually exclusive. And I think that's where like grace is hard, but like I think grace could like be like a valuable tool that could help with some understanding during difficult conversations. And because I think then it's like, oh, this person is human, this person has a lived experience, maybe this person may have heard something or experienced something that is like framing this, and they're not necessarily bad. Like that person is not bad. There's still innate good within all of us as human beings, right? But like understanding the perspective is so important for progress. And I think that's something that has like helped me with like my family. Like I said, like I was born in Jamaica, but I was raised in the United States, a completely different lived experience than like my parents, than like my sisters, in terms of just my day-to-day and the things that like I've been exposed to. So I think we always have to think about like, what is the other person like been exposed to that like shapes and influence like their mind, and like how can I calmly, even if it's hard, like share my thoughts and perspective to like shift them that 5 degrees or whatever is possible right now, and still extend grace to them.
Thank you all. Yes, I agree. I think along the lines of listening to understand and find understanding might also lead us to finding empathy. It doesn't mean agreeing. It doesn't mean having exactly the same thought, but it means that I recognize that your lived experience has given you that perspective, and that's good enough for me to recognize. I empathize with what you are saying. I understand it. And I would say for our audience, it's very important to understand that what centering means. When you are trying to represent, when you are trying to bring a different voice, when you are trying to make sure that a community is held, you are centering that community or that person. So you're not centering your feelings. This is not necessarily about how you take it, but it's how you know other people need to hear it, need respect, need understanding, and need empathy. So that way we avoid judgment. Because in society, this is a tool, but we have been taught to think in a binary way. Either it's good or bad, it's black or white, it's yes or no, it's hell or heaven. It's, and so we need to be comfortable finding ourselves in the middle of that spectrum instead of immediately trying to turn it to the extreme of a binary option. There is more than just finding black or white or any other in those binaries. And centering other communities and learning about other people allows us to understand that spectrum specifically. It has been very eye-opening for me to come to the United States and see and hear women say sorry so much. Women say sorry so much. And I have listened and I understand that women say sorry because men overpower or speak too much, or we use too much space, or we mansplain, or we erase, or we, whatever it is, women have to feel like they have to say sorry all the time. So understanding that, I have offered to friends, I hope that I can create a space between us that when you're with me, you don't have to say sorry so much. Please don't say sorry. Make mistakes. Please be comfortable being who you are and sharing the experiences you have without saying to say sorry. Please be comfortable in interrupting me. Please be comfortable in explaining how I am wrong, because I'm making a space for you to do that without having to say you are sorry. And that has created a better bond, a stronger bond with some friends. The other part is that we also need to understand that since not everybody has the same experience, then it's very difficult to pull people into somebody else's experience. This is when reading something comes up. But I suggest that people read or learn from the people with the identity of the problem that we're talking about. So we need to read U.S. history of the United States from a Native American perspective, so you understand that what white authors call the Battle of Bighorn actually was the genocide of Bighorn. You know, they're using terms that create this idea that there was a level battle, or using terms that avoid saying genocide, avoid saying violence, and instead making it look like it was a balanced squabble between two people. So there's a lot of things in our language that if we start turning them a little bit, we start opening other ears and presenting things in a different way for people to find that empathy for other communities. Very appreciative of you all sharing your experiences. Thank you.